Come to the top of your mat in Tadasana pose. You can situate your feet a little farther apart from each other. That feels better. Maybe a little closer. Just feel out where the balance is in your feet evenly, where you feel your weight supported evenly, and where your feet fit under your hips with the most balance, with the easiest and best balance. Spread out your toes. Spread down and out through the toe box, and then stretch back through the heels and push down into your heels, the center of your heels. Couple breaths here. Arms are next to your side. Feel your low back engage the muscles in the entire spine. Lift your ribs. Your sides pull back so that your rib cage can lift up rather than press forward or slump. So the rib cage separates and the sides draw back. Soften your knees so that you're not over squeezing and hyperextending, but also not bending. Take your hands to your hips or to your heart and step back with your left foot and turn your left heel down so the two heels line up. So your left toes and your right toes are staying hips width. Right foot goes back on that line, and then the heel turns in and down. That should put the two heels on the same line. And then from here, you're going to bend the right knee and push down into your right heel. Left heel is pressing back into the mat, so you're squeezing your left thigh. You're also using your left glutes to engage and externally rotate that hip a little bit, but not a lot. So the left hip is still drawing forward slightly. That's going to be driven forward by the turn of the left heel into the floor. So keep pushing the left heel into the floor and turning it back behind you. Inhale, you can reach your arms up and again, draw the side ribs back and open your chest. Right thigh is strong. Right front hip is engaged to flex the hip. Using your upper back muscles, broaden your shoulder blades and broaden your arm span and stretch your arms straight from the triceps. All right, and then go ahead and straighten your right leg and take your hands to your hips. Start to hinge out over your right hip so your right hip is flexing. If this is far apart for your feet, step forward just a little bit, but not so much that it's a super short stance. Push into the ball of your right foot. Again, the heel of your back foot, resisting the urge to let your heel turn in, your hips open. Also, not forcing your hips to square. That'll pull your right hip back too far. Right thigh engages to draw the kneecap up. And keep some space in the front hip when you expand out over your thigh and hinge halfway. And stay in this halfway point. Even if you're flexible and you can fold down, keep the space in the right hip. I want you to strengthen your back muscles here and lengthen your torso rather than fold and soften your back muscles. Your hands can stay on your hip, or you can take your arms behind your back. And then if your arms are going behind your back, push your low back into your arms without letting your elbows collapse or your shoulders collapse. Okay, inhale, come up, step forward, Tadasana. Right foot's going to go back this time. So again, if your feet are about hips width apart, you're going to follow that line back, bend the left knee, turn your right heel down at an angle, and keep pushing the right heel back. So you're using the front shin muscles to flex that ankle. Push back through your right heel, press straight down into your left heel, and then again, the right ribs are turning forward, but the front rib cage is drawing in and up. Reach your arms, press into that left heel, and bend your left knee, squeeze your left thigh. Open up your arms a little wider and press your arms to straight using the tricep muscles. Keep pressing back through that right heel to feel the right calf muscles stretch. The right hip is drawing forward, but only to where it can naturally go. You're not squaring off your hips here. Instead, turn your torso forward, and then again, draw the sides back and lengthen up your spine. Stretch out the rib cage. You can look up or out. Okay, and then straighten your left leg. Again, you can shorten this stance a little bit. Take your right foot forward a little bit. The right heel should still be pushing back behind you. With the left knee not bending now, the right hip can move forward a little bit easier. Squeeze that left thigh and pull the left kneecap up. Make sure your toes are spread apart and you're pushing down into the left foot and down into the right heel. And then extend out halfway. Flex your hips, lengthen out halfway. So you're flexing the hips, lengthening your spine. Use your back muscles, pull up the front rib cage. Again, draw the side waist up to the ceiling without turning your shoulders down. So hands can be on your hips here, or you can take your arms behind. And again, press into your forearms with your back. Open your shoulders. Stretch your chest forward. And keep space in that left hip joint. Okay, inhale, come up to stand. Shoot off that right foot and step forward. Tadasana, mountain pose. Resituate your feet. Again, put them under your hips where you feel the best balance. Okay, Vrikshasana tree pose. I'm going to take my right foot and I'm going to step on my left ankle. You can either turn your toes out here and remain on the floor with your toes. Or if you're going to slide up the front of your shin, stop below the knee. I mean, if you go on the knee, it's not a big deal. Ideally, you don't want to push on the knee, but you're not going to blow your knee out like some people say. But here, if you're taking it below the knee, then you're going to turn the heel out. And if you're going to lift your foot up higher, then turn the heel. So either way, you're sliding the foot up the front of your leg and then turning your heel out so that you don't go, right? And then it's all misalignment. So we keep the hips and shoulders pointing forward. The right foot comes up to where you can take it. Then on your thigh, your heel pushes in and rotates. And then you rotate the thigh out without lifting your right butt cheek. Squeeze your outer right hip in. Press down into the floor with your left leg. Squeeze the two hips into the core, okay? Your right toes turn back to point to the left heel. Got myself way off balance there. So for me, I have to turn my left heel in a little bit because of the natural rotation of my femurs. So when my foot is straight forward, it doesn't work. And also, don't look down to your foot. Things go south that way. Squeeze in with your legs. Both of them squeeze in. And then you can reach your arms up if you'd like. Press your arms out to the side of the room if you'd like. Anything goes here. Left foot is really strong. Lift the inner left arches. Squeeze your right glutes. Pull the outer right thigh open without lifting the right glutes up. And then from here, step down and then back with your right foot. And then go ahead and turn to face the right side of your mat. So you're in a wide leg stance. Angle your left toes in a lot and then lift your right toes and spin on your heel. So your right foot can point straight back now to the back end of your mat. Squeeze your hips in, lift your ribs up. Left toes, left knee, and left hip point off at an angle. Right hip, right knees, and toes point forward. So you can feel this is a triangle shape here, okay? And then your right hand comes down, your right leg. You let your hips rotate as they need, but they don't go first, okay? So it's not moving them out of the way to get deeper. Keep them engaged. Again, let the hips angle. And then your right hand down, left hand up. Then let the hips move as they need to, but keep squeezing the right sit bone under and rolling the inner right thigh open. So the right thigh is rolling open, the right knee is pulling up using the right thigh muscles. Press down into your left heel and then lengthen your left arm up to the ceiling as you press your right hand down into your right leg. So your arms are pressing away from each other. Lengthen out the back of your neck. Lengthen out your rib cage. And then bend your right knee and warrior two. Open your arms. Sit down deeper into that right heel. And if you need a little bit of a longer stance here, you can always wiggle the right foot forward. Sometimes they don't match up perfectly. The right thigh does not need to be parallel to the floor. And also your right hip is only opening up as your right thigh is opening. The ribs are turning instead. The torso is turning to face the side of the room. Squeeze your triceps up to your arm bones and press your arms out straight. Press the mat away with both feet and really squeeze this outer right hip area to get that hip flexion. Squeeze the right thigh to stabilize the leg. Turn your shoulders towards the side of the room, but turn your gaze over your right hand. Good, and then straighten the right leg. Turn your right toes back in. Step back up to the front of your mat. Shake it out. Okay, back to standing pose. And then we'll take Vrikshasana on the second side, tree pose. So I'm going to take my left foot over to my left heel, or left heel over to the right ankle. And then you can start by sliding your foot up the ankle and then turning the heel, turning the toes, left toes towards the right heel. And look forward. So I'm looking down and trying to see it, and that's why I'm getting wobbly. Also, I'm going to right away turn my right heel in a tiny, tiny bit. And then I'm going to slide it up a little higher. Sometimes you can reach down and help with the hand to pull the foot up on the front of the thigh a little bit more. But then let your toes turn back and let your thigh externally rotate without lifting the left glutes. So the left glutes pull down, right hip bone lifts up, squeeze in with your thighs, use these glute muscles, they're squeezing, and then you can stretch your arms up to the ceiling. The right thigh is engaged. Use your right toes for balance. Let them dig into the ground a little bit. Use your upper back muscles to open your chest and open your shoulders so it's not crunching up to your ears. Your shoulders aren't crunching up to your ears. Straighten those arms out. Press out with your triceps. All right, and then take your left foot down and then step it back. Turn to face the left edge of your mat. Right toes angle in, left toes turn 90 degrees out. Then look at your left knee and make sure it's not falling down. So that right hip has to turn in the same line as the right toes. So if your right toes are pointing out, your right hip is pointing out, the left knee is going in, it's not going to be good. Right toes in. So this also isn't the right heel dropping back. That'll send your hips back. So keep your natural stance. Angle the toes in. Now I have to find my natural stance again. Squeeze the hip bones in, and again, the ribs and the shoulders point in that diagonal line of the right toes. Left toes are forward. So I've got my right shoulder and my left shoulder pointing in their respective foot line. Exhale, left hand down, squeeze in and up. Let the hips shift as you take Trikonasana. It's a side bend. Your hips are going to shift. We don't want to shift the hips first though. Squeeze that left thigh, lift the left kneecap, press down into your feet, lengthen out your neck, and open up both sides of your neck. So the right side and the left side are equally long. And then press into both hands. Right hand up, left hand down. Kick back into your left hand with your left shin or foot. Okay, bend your left knee and inhale up to warrior two. And again, if you need to open up the space a little bit more for your hips to sink, please do. Situate those legs to meet each posture where your body needs to be. But if you step your right foot back longer and your left hip drops, try to avoid that. So lift the left hip up, bend the left hip. So flex the left hip. Push back with your right foot, the right foot. The right leg is extending. So you're using the glutes and the hamstrings to extend your hip. Thighs to straighten the knee, the right thigh. Left thigh is there to stabilize that left hip and help the flexion in the left hip. Turn your ribs, turn your torso, not your hips. Open your arms. Make sure that your left knee isn't turning in and your left toes are not turning in. So sometimes you can lift your left heel and turn it in and set it down. Open your arms, open your ribs. Try not to back bend too much, not more than your natural back bend. Okay, straighten your left leg, turn your toes. You can shorten your stance a little bit just to make it easier then to step back to the top of your mat. Samastitihi, standing pose. Inhale, Urdhva Hastasana. Exhale, Uttanasana, forward fold. First one, so go slow. Step back 1 foot at a time, downward facing dog. Adho Mukha Svanasana. Pinch the mat with your index finger and your thumb, so you could even look up and see that there's even spaces between each digit. The thumb isn't stretching apart farther. Squeeze your thighs to lift your knees up. In fact, you might lift your heels and lift those sit bones. Feel the rib cage expand. And then draw in slightly from the belly button so you're not over expanding. Then you can draw the heels down, but not if the hips lower and tilt. So if the tailbone tilts under, lift the heels back up. You can put something under your head here to rest if you'd like. If your hands slip out, just walk them back in. Try not to make this too short though. If your stance isn't set up right, you're going to feel more weight in the hands or the feet. You should feel equal support in the legs and the arms. Engage your inner arches and lift them up away from the floor. Lift your inner thighs. All right, and then come down to kneeling position. We're going to come into reclining position for bridge pose. Set your feet up right in front of your hips, right in front of your sit bones. Arms next to your sides. You might even be able to lightly just kind of touch your heels with your fingers and then start to press down into your heels and lift your hips up. And if that feels way too restricted in the movement and the mobility, take your feet apart a little wider without turning your toes out. So make sure your toes are turning in. They're going to feel like they're turning in excessively, but they're probably actually straight forward. And then start to lift your hips again. So when you lift your hips, you want to feel the weight go back into the shoulders, not your neck, not your head. So when you lift your hips, think about pressing your chest back to your chin while you press your knees straight forward. Use your glutes and your hamstrings to press your hips up. Use your back muscles to extend your spine and press into the floor with your shoulders. You could bend your elbows and take your hands up here, or you could start to interlace your fingers and crawl those shoulders under a little bit closer toward each other. If you're doing that, you might even feel the spine come completely off the floor, but really keep the neck long. Press into your heels, engage your glutes, push your hips straight up, push your thigh bones straight up, and then push your knees straight forward. Okay, slide your shoulders back out, palms on the floor, and then lower down to your hips. Let your knees either rest against each other or just stay straight up to the ceiling. Resist hugging your knees into your chest here. Let your back relax without pulling your low back down. So just keep the natural curve in your low back. All right, and then take your feet up to the ceiling right over your knees. And then try not to pull your feet back over your face too much. So you should feel the back of your sacrum pressing straight down into the mat, and your low back has its natural little curve. So if there were a light shining through, you could see a tiny sliver of light between your low back, not a huge gaping light hole, just a tiny little sliver of light. Spread out your shoulder blades. Open your armpits here so they're not opening out, but think about like hollowing out the armpits. And you're using those muscles on your back to do that. Thighs are pressing the knees straight, pulling the kneecaps up, push your feet up to the ceiling. Engage your belly around the belly button, but not so much that it pushes your low back down into the floor. So the belly's engaged to hug, not push. And you should still be able to breathe around that soft abdominal hug of the belly button. Okay, stay here or move this into shoulder stand, Salam Sarvangasana. And then for shoulder stand, if you need a little momentum, you can take your legs down and then sweep up. Or you can start to roll overhead with your toes, use a chair or a wall. Elbows come in as close as you can get them. Hands up as high as you can get them on your back. Take your feet over your hips, not your face. Press your thighs, squeeze your kneecaps up towards your hip bones, and then again, hug the spine with your belly button. Try to get your chest towards your chin. Press into the floor with your shoulders and your elbows. Your head should just be lightly touching the floor. No pressure in your neck. All right, and then take your toes overhead, Halasana plow pose, and release your hands if you can. Press your elbows towards the floor and press your wrists towards the floor. Engage your thighs, pull your kneecaps up towards your hips, and then point your toes back. Keep the shoulders gently pressing into the floor. Head is relaxed on the floor, neck is relaxed. All right, place your palms back on the floor and then roll back down, feet to the floor. And take a big inhale here. All right, and then roll up to seated. Come into a seated position. And then from the seated position, we'll just take an easy twist off to the left. Right hand to the left thigh. Look over your left shoulder, open your chest. And then come back through center. And then go off to the right. Look over the right shoulder, open your chest, open your throat. Okay, and then untwist as you inhale. Take your legs out straight. Dandasana, staff pose. Hands on the floor next to your hips. Draw your shoulder blades in. And the muscles, not so much draw the shoulder blades in, actually use the shoulder blade muscles to draw the shoulder heads open. Push down into the heels of your hands, press out through your feet so the hands aren't forward, they're not back. Right next to your hips, right under the armpits. The wrist crease should go right under your elbow, right under your shoulder. Use your core to press your torso up taller. Head back in line with your pelvis. Engage your core here. This is just like legs up in the air. So hug your navel with your belly, with your core, but keep the slight extension in your low back. Okay, release your arms, and then you're going to take your right foot up, just like we did for tree, and then turn the right heel, the bottom of the right heel to the inside of your left thigh. So the right knee just turns out and down. It doesn't pull back. It stays right out. You're pressing the outer right calf and the outer right thigh down towards the floor. Keep the left foot pressing forward so it's not sickling out, so your thigh isn't rotating in your hip. So you've got the thigh neutral. Pushing into your left foot with your right, or your left thigh with your right foot, and keep the right knee out and down and lean out over your left leg. So you could use a blanket under your right knee or a block if it doesn't reach the floor, but you want something for that right foot that right knee to push into, and stretch over your left leg. Stretch your chest forward, your sit bones back. Let your pelvis tilt. So the pelvis tilts anteriorly, so your sit bones shoot back. Pubic bone rolls down towards the floor. Belly button, again, is hugging the core, or the core is hugging the belly button, but not restricting your low back extension. Left thigh is engaged. Pull your left kneecap up. And then inhale, come up to seated. And straighten your right leg back out. Dandasana just for a moment. And then your left foot comes up. Turn on your right thigh, the inner left heel up to the ceiling. And again, press down with your left thigh. And the right leg again, straight out. So push down into that left knee with the outer left hip, the piriformis and the glutes pulling that left thigh down. Use the inner thigh muscles as well to help open. And then lengthen out over your right leg. Keep the left knee pressing down. Keep pushing into your right thigh with your left foot. And then keep the left or the right foot from sickling. And the right thigh is engaged to pull that kneecap up. Stretch your chest long. Push those sit bones back. Let the pelvis rotate. This posture is Janu Shirshasana, head of the knee pose. And so you can feel this push in that left knee, a nice intense stress, a good stress on the left knee that strengthens the left knee joint. Okay, inhale, come back up. Pull your left knee in and straighten the left leg out. Staff pose just to center again. And then start to lean forward. Again, let your sit bones stretch back. And then you can reach forward with your hands, the two big toe mounds pressed to the front, the pinky toe sides pull back, squeeze your thighs, use your hip flexors to forward fold to the front of your left and right hip creases, the low belly. Those muscles are contracting for you to flex at your hips. Let the back muscles relax, and you can take your neck in a long, relaxed position. Soften your shoulders. If you're using your hands to help find, but they're not pulling your shoulders forward, elbows are pulling back, hands are pulling back, chest is stretching forward. Okay, and then inhale, come up to seated. Then we're going to take the right foot and step it over the outside of your left knee, above the knee. Right foot stays pointing straight forward. Keep the left leg straight for this one. Push out through your left foot and then twist to your right. I like looking over my left shoulder for this twist. It fires up the spiral fascial line. You take your gaze where you need it to go. It can go over your right shoulder instead if you prefer. Push out through the ball of your left foot and press down into the inner big toe mound of your right foot so that your right knee is hugging to your left ribs and your left ribs hugging to your right thigh. All right, and then inhale, untwist, stretch out your right leg, and we'll switch sides. You're gonna take your left foot, fix my microphone, your left foot comes up and over to the outside of your right knee. Right foot stays forward, left toes point straight forward. And again, your ankle is hooking just right above the right knee, left ankle above the right knee. Hug with your right arm. Push out through your right foot and try not to let your left hip fall back. Instead, twist from the left ribs, thoracic spine, and then open your chest. So I'm keeping my gaze forward so I don't slouch down. Plus it feels better and I can breathe a little bit easier here. Keep pushing into the ball of the left foot so your left knee is moving towards your right armpit and your right ribs towards your left thigh. I'm sending that low back in and up, chest in and up, or chest forward and up, and the left hip and the right hip, the sit bones push down into the floor evenly. Okay, inhale, release that. Take your legs out to straight. And then we're going to move this into boat pose, Pariparnavasana. So I'm going to lean back, lift my feet in a little so my knees bend. I'm lengthening my heart. And so here you could keep your big toes on the floor and just lift your heels, or you could start to lift your feet just to knee height, or then start to lift your feet all the way up to your forehead height and a higher even. Look to your ankles if your legs are straight. Look to your toes if your knees are bent. Squeeze those thighs, press out through your knees if your legs are straight. Lift your chest through, push from the middle upper back. You should feel this in your thighs and the hip flexors. Use your back muscles to lift and lengthen, stretch out through your hands, use your triceps to straighten your arms out. All right, and then take your feet down, cross your ankles and come over to hands and knees pose. And then I'm going to come down to the floor into a belly position. Palms next to ribs. Point your toes back. You can take your feet as far apart as you need here. And then inhale, lift your chest. Keep the thighs on the floor. Keep your hips on the floor, but engage your thighs to lift your kneecaps. Point your big toes straight back. Elbows kind of push forward, even if they're bent. So you're not locking your arms out. So if your elbows push forward and your shoulders come up, try not to do that. Imagine you can push your mat away and then pull your chest open. You can look up here, lift your chest, lift your throat. Glutes are engaged. Pinch your mat with your index finger and your thumb just like you would for downward facing dog. Exhale, lower down. I'm going to add into locust pose here. So that's going to be a little different. You can revisit cobra. If cobra was really intense, you can come into sphinx pose with your elbows on the floor, still engaging your thighs and pulling your chest through. Otherwise, you can lift your feet, keep your hands on the floor, or lift your arms and then take your hands together. Shalabhasana C. Press your big toes back. Lift your chest, lift your gaze. Feet together if you can. And then lower down. Just rest your forehead on the floor and relax here for a moment. All right, let's push up to hands and knees. Knees together, feet apart, and sit down between your heels. Separate your toes if you need to use your hands to do so. Hands on thighs. Line the head up, back of your head with back of your pelvis. Virasana, hero pose. Squeeze your heels into your hips. My feet are a little too far apart. So I want to be able to squeeze my hips with my heels. If you need to sit on a block, please do. Or a blanket. Hands to your knees. Draw back with your hands so your fingers grip your knees. Pull the front ribs in and up. Strong pose here. Strong core. Hug your belly button with your core muscles. And then on your inhale, lift up to kneeling. Take your feet, or your knees rather, a little farther apart. Flip your toes. Ustrasana, camel pose. You can go at this many ways. I hear a lot of people, this posture can be a little uncomfortable for people, so please make this comfortable for you. So if leaning back isn't good and it makes you push your hips open and forward and pinch your low back, I would suggest starting down, hands to heels or hands to blocks, and then coming forward and up, which this works better for me because I do have a tendency to dump in my back. And then once you get your hands on your heels or your calves or your blocks, lift your chest, lift your hip bones up to the ceiling so they're not shoving forward over your knees. Instead, you're pressing the knees forward and your thighs forward, and then let your heart open up. You can take your head back all the way, but you're not letting it hang. You're squeezing your upper back with the back of your head so your neck is engaged. Inhale, pull up with your core. And then hands to the floor. Cross your ankles and come back to seated. All right, and we're going to take Gomukhasana cow face. So I'm going to take my left knee under my right knee. My left knee is going to point straight forward. The left heel's around my right hip. You can have your right shin on your left thigh. You can have your right foot on the floor if you need, or you can pull the right heel back. If you can, come over to hands and knees and take the left foot center, sit on your left heel, right in the middle of your butt, and then pull the right foot up. You can pause here, hands on your knee, chin towards chest, Jalandhara Bandha. Draw the belly in, Uddiyana Bandha a little bit, not a lot, and breathe. Okay, and then come over to hands and knees again, and then you can switch out your feet. You can sit back once you get your left foot out of the way, and then you can cross your right leg under. Again, you can stay here, and you can hug the shin and still draw your chin towards the jugular notch. So we're not taking a full Jalandhara Bandha, you're just drawing the chin down in and lengthening at the upper back. So just recovering from those back bends is all this is about. You can then take that left heel over a little bit more. Again, you can stay here, or you can start to come over to hands and knees, turn the right foot back, sit on the heel in the perineum right in the center of your butt, pull the left foot in and up so the top of your foot is on the floor and pointing back. And then you've got the hands on the knee. Draw your sit bones in, squeeze the heel with your butt. Chin towards chest, shoulders open, chest through. Hug the core with the spine, or this belly button with the spine. All right, and then come over to hands and knees, move that foot out of the way, and then take your legs out. All right, come onto your back. Take your legs up to the ceiling. Arms out, squeeze your belly, and then exhale, legs off to the left. Keep your right shoulder stretching over, and take your right abdominals over to the right. So once your legs hit, really stretch the right side of your belly over to the right side of the room. You might even be able to, make contact with your left hand and your foot, but that's not necessary. Instead, open the chest to the ceiling and really push that right shoulder over and the right belly over. And push out through your feet, squeeze your ankles toward each other, and the heels probably aren't going to line up, that's fine. But try to get them as close to together as possible. So you're pushing your right foot away from your right shoulder and pulling your right shoulder over. It's not jamming into the floor. And then inhale, lift back up. Exhale here. Another big inhale, and then exhale, take your legs off to the side. Keep your shoulder as close to the floor as you can without forcing it. So your torso did not go with your legs. Keep pushing your left leg away, but pull your left belly over and your left shoulder over. And then lift back up, squeeze those legs together, and then hug knees into chest. And take your legs out in a resting pose. Just a brief moment in Shavasana here. Find your breath, find some stillness. Soften your face and jaw, fingers and toes. Close your eyelids down. And just feel the floor supporting your body here for the next few moments. And when you're ready to move, you can start to stretch out your arms and legs. Please take longer. If you've got longer to spare, please do. Enjoy as much time as you can. And then when you're ready to come up to seated, you can rock up or come off to the side. And make your way up to a seated position. And pause here. And then as you're ending your practice, as always, take a moment to bow to yourself and tell yourself thank you. And I thank you for practicing with me.